Lily Carter smoothed the worn fabric of her sensible jeans, a familiar pre-shift ritual. Her small apartment, meticulously organized despite its cramped space, offered a stark contrast to the grand Coral Gables mansions she usually drove past. Tuition bills for her psychology grad program dictated this life. Endless studying, late-night research, and babysitting gigs that paid just enough to keep her afloat. Simple. That was the goal. Keep life simple, predictable, and focused on her future. The address, delivered with hushed reverence by the agency, led her deep into a labyrinth of manicured hedges and wrought-iron gates. The Hayes Villa loomed, a sprawling Spanish-style behemoth that swallowed the twilight. It was opulent, undeniably, but an eerie quiet clung to it, a silence that felt heavy, almost suffocating. She swallowed, her professional composure a thin shield against the sudden chill that had nothing to do with the Miami evening. Then, a sound sliced through the silence, echoing from somewhere deep within the house. It was a child's cry, not a tantrum, but something far more raw and desperate, a keening wail that spoke of inconsolable grief. Lily's professional mask slipped, replaced by an instinctive empathy. That wasn't just a child. That was a quiet scream. She followed the sound, past gleaming marble floors and priceless art, until she stood before a half-open door. The cries were louder now, heartbreaking. She pushed the door wider, stepping into a room that was both lavish and profoundly sad. A little boy, no older than 5, lay curled on a vast bed, his small body shaking with sobs. Toys lay scattered, untouched. The air was thick with unspoken sorrow. Lily didn't rush. Her psychology training kicked in, a practiced calm settling over her. She observed. The boy clutched a worn teddy bear, his face buried in its fur. His distress wasn't about wanting a toy or a snack. It was deeper, primal, grief. She saw it in the way his small shoulders trembled, in the hopelessness of each choked sound. She moved slowly, her voice soft, a low hum of comfort rather than direct words. "Hey there, little one," she murmured, her voice a gentle current in the storm of his tears. She sat on the edge of the bed, not touching him, just being present. Her gaze swept the room, searching for a clue, a comfort. Her eyes landed on a small spherical object on a bedside table, a nightlight projector. She reached for it, her fingers finding the switch. Instantly, the ceiling above them erupted in a swirling galaxy of gentle pastel stars. The boy's sobs faltered, replaced by a hitching breath. He slowly uncurled, his tear-streaked face turning upwards, captivated. Lily simply watched him, letting the soft light work its magic. She began to hum, a lullaby she barely remembered from her own childhood, a wordless melody that filled the space between them. Gradually, his breathing evened out. His eyelids fluttered heavy. The cries faded to soft sniffles, then to quiet, even breaths. He was asleep, a small hand still clutching his teddy, his face finally peaceful under the shimmering stars. Lily remained there, utterly engrossed in the delicate peace she had brought. Her own worries, her tuition, her simple life, all receded. All that mattered was this small, vulnerable child. A low rumble from downstairs vibrated through the silent house. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, approached. She heard the click of a lock, the soft thud of a door. A presence. He was home. A tall shadow fell across the bedroom doorway. Lily didn't flinch, didn't even turn fully, still focused on the sleeping boy. "He's asleep," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. Alexander Hayes stood there, a formidable figure silhouetted against the dim hallway. He was older than she'd expected, his sharp features carved from something unyielding. His eyes, dark and piercing, swept over his son, then settled on her. She felt the weight of that gaze, a silent assessment that missed nothing. He didn't move, didn't speak for a long moment. The air thrummed with his controlled power. "You're good with him," he finally said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't a question, it was a statement of fact, delivered with the quiet authority of a man accustomed to being obeyed. "You'll be back tomorrow." It wasn't an offer, it was a directive, a cryptic acknowledgement of her competence, an implicit promise of continued employment, and something else, something unspoken but profoundly felt, a silent assertion of his world and her new place within it. Lily felt a sudden dizzying awareness that her simple life had just become infinitely more complicated. Lily Carter gripped the steering wheel, the hum of her small sedan a stark contrast to the echoing quiet of the Hayes villa. One shift, that's all it had been, and already her carefully constructed world felt tilted on its axis. Alexander Hayes. His name resonated in her mind, a low thrum of power and danger. She'd told herself she wouldn't think about him, but his dark eyes, that gravelly voice, they had etched themselves into her memory. She pulled up to the imposing gates again, the heavy iron swinging open with a silent, almost predatory grace. This house wasn't just opulent. It was a fortress. She noticed it now, the discreet cameras tucked into the eaves, the almost imperceptible glint of metal from behind a distant hedge, the quiet, watchful efficiency of the staff who moved like shadows. This wasn't just a rich family. This was a family with secrets, a family that needed protection, and last night she had walked right into the heart of it. The boy, Leo, was waiting for her, not crying this time, but clutching his teddy bear by the grand staircase. He looked small and lost in the cavernous space. Lily knelt, offering a genuine smile. "Hey, Leo, ready for some adventure?" She spent the afternoon building their routine. She read him stories, her voice soft and steady, filling the silence of the house. She helped him piece together a complicated dinosaur puzzle, praising his focus. She saw flashes of joy in his eyes, brief sparks that quickly dimmed, overshadowed by an undercurrent of sorrow she understood too well. He was bright, sensitive, and profoundly affected by his mother's absence. He needed stability, a constant. The air shifted as evening approached. Alexander Hayes was home. Lily felt his presence before she saw him, a subtle tightening in the atmosphere, a quiet command that permeated the very walls. He appeared in the doorway of the playroom, leaning against the frame, arms crossed over a dark, impeccably tailored shirt. His gaze, as always, went straight to Leo, then lingered on Lily. "He seems better today," Alexander stated, his voice devoid of inflection. "He's a smart boy," Lily replied, meeting his gaze evenly. "He just needs routine and a lot of patience." She didn't elaborate, didn't offer psychological jargon. She kept it simple, direct. Alexander pushed off the doorway, stepping into the room. He moved with a quiet power that seemed to absorb all sound. "You have a degree in psychology, don't you?" "I'm a grad student," she corrected, a slight edge to her voice. She wasn't going to inflate her credentials for him. "You observe well," he continued, circling the room slowly, his eyes missing nothing. "You understand children." He paused, turning to face her fully. "What do you think Leo needs most right now?" It was a test. She felt it, a subtle pressure. "He needs consistency," Lily said, holding his gaze. "A predictable presence. Someone who understands that his grief isn't a problem to be fixed, but a process to be navigated." She didn't falter. She wouldn't. Her professional boundaries were her shield. "And he needs to know he's safe." Alexander's dark eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of something unreadable passing through them. "Safe," he repeated, almost to himself. He took another step closer. "I want you to be his primary caregiver." Lily's breath caught. "Mr. Hayes, I'm a student. My schedule is flexible," he cut in, his voice unwavering. "It will be made flexible. You'll move into the guest suite. Your tuition will be covered in full, and your privacy, your safety will be assured within these walls." The offer was staggering, impossible. Tuition, an end to the endless struggle. But the words, "within these walls," hung in the air, a silken thread of warning. It wasn't just a job offer, it was an invitation into his world, a world she knew, instinctively, was dangerous. Staying meant stepping into the heart of that danger, losing the simple life she craved. Leo, oblivious, giggled as he finally placed the last dinosaur piece. Lily looked at his innocent face, then back at Alexander, whose gaze was intense, unyielding. She needed the money desperately. But more than that, she saw the boy, saw the need in his eyes, heard the quiet scream from last night. She cared, deeply. "I accept," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. The words were out before she could second-guess them. She knew with a sudden, dizzying certainty that her life was about to become anything but simple. The guest suite was spacious, luxurious even, a world away from her cramped apartment. But the gold-leafed walls and plush carpets felt less like comfort and more like a cage, albeit a gilded one. Lily pressed her hand against the cool glass of the window, looking out at the sprawling, perfectly manicured gardens. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since she'd agreed to Alexander Hayes's terms, since her simple life had dissolved into this complex, dangerous reality. Her routine with Leo had solidified into a comforting rhythm. Mornings were filled with stories and quiet games, afternoons with art projects or walks in the guarded garden. Today, they were in the sun-drenched art room, Leo hunched over a large sheet of paper, his tongue poking out in concentration. Lily watched him, a quiet warmth spreading through her chest. He was drawing the ocean, a vibrant, messy swirl of blues and greens, with a small, red boat bobbing precariously in the middle. His small hand, guided by her quiet encouragement, picked up a pastel crayon, a soft, creamy yellow, and painstakingly drew a sun. It wasn't just a sun. It was a hopeful, blazing orb in the center of his turbulent sea. "It's beautiful, Leo," she murmured, genuinely. "Your sun is so bright." He looked up, a rare, shy smile gracing his lips. It was a small step, a fragile victory in the long, arduous process of healing, and Lily felt a fierce protectiveness bloom inside her. The door opened silently. Alexander. Lily felt his presence before she saw him, a familiar tension settling in the room. He always seemed to appear out of nowhere, a dark, imposing figure, his movements fluid and soundless. He stopped just inside the doorway, his eyes sweeping over the scene. Leo, the crayons, the bright, hopeful drawing. His gaze softened almost imperceptibly before settling on Lily. "He's making progress," Alexander stated, his voice low, a deep rumble that always made the air around them hum. "He is," Lily confirmed, her voice even. "He's expressing himself, that's crucial." He walked further into the room, stopping behind Leo. His large hand, usually so controlled, hovered for a moment over his son's small head, a gesture of affection held back. "You believe this helps?" "Absolutely," Lily said, turning to face him fully. "Art is a language, especially for children who might not have the words yet. It allows them to process emotions, to feel safe enough to create." She met his intense gaze, refusing to back down. "Leo isn't a problem to be solved with security measures, Mr. Hayes. He's a child who is grieving. His emotional well-being is as important as his physical safety." Alexander's jaw tightened. He was accustomed to commanding, to giving orders, not to being subtly challenged. "I provide for his safety, and I provide for his heart," Lily countered, her voice firm, respectful, but unwavering. She wouldn't let him reduce Leo to a strategic asset. "Both are necessary." A spark, sharp and undeniable, flared between them. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was a clash of wills, a recognition of opposing strengths and something else, a strange, dangerous current that pulled them closer even as their words pushed them apart. His eyes, dark and piercing, held hers, a silent battle of intellect and conviction. She saw the flash of surprise in them, perhaps even a grudging respect. He nodded slowly, a single, sharp dip of his head. Understood. He turned to Leo. Good work, son. Then, without another word, he left, leaving behind an echo of his power and a lingering scent of expensive cologne and something else, something raw and masculine that stirred a strange fluttering in Lily's stomach. Lily felt the flush rise to her cheeks. She had challenged him, the man who commanded a city, and he had listened. The audacity of it, the sheer recklessness, thrilled her even as it terrified her. She was living in his gilded cage, under his protection, and with every passing day, the lines blurred further. The tuition money was a weight of gold, securing her future, but costing her the simplicity she had always craved. His protection was a shield, but it was also a chain, binding her to a world of danger and a man whose presence was becoming increasingly intoxicating. She was losing her easy freedom, trading it for a connection that felt both inevitable and profoundly dangerous. The idea of leaving the villa, even for a few hours, felt like a breath of fresh air. Alexander had suggested Wynwood, a place of vibrant murals and street art. Lily had almost choked on her coffee. Alexander Hayes, Miami's shadowy king, wanted to visit an art district. The incongruity was almost laughable, yet Lily found herself looking forward to it with a childish eagerness she hadn't felt in years. Leo, for his part, was practically bouncing, clutching his small sketchbook. Wynwood was a kaleidoscope of color and sound. Walls exploded with intricate designs, music pulsed from open cafes, and the air hummed with a different kind of energy than the silent, stately villa. Leo, mesmerized, pointed at a giant chameleon, then at a swirling galaxy. Lily laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound that surprised even herself. She found herself watching Alexander, too. Here, amidst the chaos and beauty, his usual rigid posture seemed to soften, his dark eyes taking in the art with an intensity that hinted at a hidden appreciation. He wore a simple, dark t-shirt, no suit, and for a fleeting moment he looked almost human, almost normal. They stopped at a particularly striking mural of a woman with roses in her hair. Leo was drawing furiously in his sketchbook. Lily felt a strange lightness, a sense of stolen normalcy. This could almost be a family outing. The thought sent a jolt through her, quickly followed by a cold splash of reality. That reality arrived in the form of a black sedan, idling slowly across the street. It was a common car, unremarkable, but Lily had seen it before, or one exactly like it. Yesterday, down the road from the villa, and the day before, near the grocery store she'd been taken to. Her professional training, the part of her that observed and analyzed, pricked at her. Coincidence? Maybe. But then a man emerged from a nearby cafe, his eyes scanning the street. His gaze seemed to linger a beat too long on Leo, then on Alexander, before moving on. He wasn't subtle enough for Alexander's world, but he was subtle enough to make Lily's stomach clench. She glanced at Alexander. His jaw was tight. His eyes, though outwardly focused on Leo's drawing, held a stillness that spoke of heightened awareness. He had seen it too, or felt it. The lightness evaporated, replaced by the familiar tension. The shadow had followed them, even here. Alexander put a hand on Leo's shoulder. "Go with Maria and get an ice cream, son. Lily and I will catch up." His voice was calm, but the underlying command was unmistakable. Leo, sensing the shift, nodded and trotted off with the nanny, clutching his sketchbook. Alexander turned to Lily, his expression grim. He led her away from the vibrant mural, towards a quieter alleyway, the smell of fresh paint mixing with the exhaust fumes. "You noticed them." It wasn't a question. Lily's heart hammered, but she met his gaze. The black sedan. The man at the cafe. He nodded slowly. Good. You're observant. That's important. He paused, his dark eyes intense, searching hers. My world, Lily, is not like Winwood. It's not a place for innocence. It's dangerous. You've seen the security at the house. This is why. He didn't say mafia. He didn't have to. The unspoken word hung heavy in the air, a cold, sharp blade. Staying with Leo, he continued, his voice low, means accepting that danger. It means you are, by extension, part of my family, and my family is a target. His hand, surprisingly gentle, reached out and cupped her chin, tilting her face up. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. My code is family first. No harm to caregivers. But that doesn't make you invincible. It means I will protect you with everything I have. But you have to trust me, implicitly, when I tell you something is a threat. Lily felt a shiver run through her, a mix of fear and a strange, thrilling warmth from his touch. He was offering protection, yes, but at what cost? Implicit trust, blind acceptance. Her simple life, her academic dreams, felt impossibly far away. This was the bargain, her safety, her tuition, for her presence in a world she didn't understand, a world that was constantly watching. She pulled back slightly, her gaze firm. I accepted this position for Leo, she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. I care about him. I won't abandon him. Her resolve, usually quiet, now burned bright. But if I'm going to be part of this family, if I'm going to implicitly trust you, then I need to understand. I refuse to be a blind pawn in your game, Mr. Hayes. I need transparency. I need to know what I'm up against so I can help protect him too. Alexander's eyes narrowed, surprised by her defiance, by the unexpected steel in her voice. He studied her, a long, assessing look that seemed to strip away her composure, yet found something resilient beneath. She was shaken, yes, but not broken, not compliant. Her intelligence, her unwavering ethics were on full display, challenging his very authority. The air between them crackled, charged with unspoken truths and a dangerous, undeniable respect. He didn't answer immediately, but the silent acknowledgement in his gaze was a terrifying, exhilarating affirmation. She had just carved out her own terms. The night plunged into chaos. A piercing shriek tore through the villa's opulent silence, ripping Lily from a fitful sleep. It wasn't the familiar, heartbreaking cry of grief, but something sharper, more primal. Terror. It was Leo. She was out of bed in an instant, her heart hammering against her ribs. She sprinted down the silent hallway, the polished marble cold beneath her bare feet. The screams grew louder, choked and desperate. "Mama! Mama!" She burst into Leo's room. He was thrashing in his bed, tangled in his sheets, his small face contorted in pure panic. His eyes were wide open, but unseeing, lost in the grip of a nightmare. "Mama! Don't go!" Lily didn't hesitate. She climbed onto the bed, gathering him into her arms. His small body was trembling violently, slick with sweat. She held him close, rocking him gently, murmuring soft, nonsensical words of comfort against his temple. "It's okay, Leo. You're safe. I'm here. It's just a dream, little lion. Just a dream." She felt the dampness of his tears soaking her nightshirt, the desperate claw of his fingers on her arm. He was inconsolable, trapped in the phantom pain of loss. A shadow fell across the doorway. Alexander. He stood there, a formidable silhouette against the dim hallway light, dressed in a loose, dark linen shirt that somehow made him look less imposing, more human. His eyes, usually so controlled, were wide with alarm as he took in the scene. He moved swiftly, silently, crossing the room in 3 powerful strides. He knelt beside the bed, his presence immediately amplifying the tension in the room, yet his gaze was entirely on his son. He reached out, his hand hovering, uncertain, before resting gently on Leo's back. "Leo," he rumbled, his voice rough with concern. "It's all right, son. You're safe." But Leo only clung tighter to Lily, still whimpering, "Mama!" The sound was a raw, visceral punch to Alexander's gut. Lily felt him flinch, a subtle tremor that passed through his powerful frame. His usual mask of impenetrable control fractured, revealing something profoundly vulnerable beneath. He looked lost, helpless in a way she had never seen him. The man who commanded a city, who could summon an army with a word, was utterly undone by his son's grief. He swallowed, his throat working. His gaze found Lily's, a silent plea in their depths. He usually doesn't," Alexander began, his voice barely a whisper. "He usually doesn't call out for her. Not like this." He looked away, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for an answer in the shadows. She loved the ocean. She used to take him to the beach every Sunday, even when he was tiny. His voice was low, laced with a pain that was almost unbearable to witness. She'd find him pebbles, smooth ones. He loved them. Lily felt a sudden, sharp ache in her own chest. He was talking about his wife. The words were few, but they painted a vivid, heartbreaking picture of a life that had been. She saw the man beneath the syndicate head, the widower who still carried a heavy, unspoken grief, who yearned to comfort his son but was paralyzed by his own wound. He didn't just command a city, he also knelt for a bedtime story, or in this case a nightmare his heart laid bare. As Leo's sobs finally subsided into soft sniffles, his small hand, still clutching Lily, reached beneath his pillow. He pulled out a small grey pebble, smooth and worn, faintly stained with what looked like dried salt, an ocean-stained pebble. He clutched it to his chest, his breathing finally evening out, his eyes drooping. Lily looked at the pebble, then at Alexander, whose gaze was fixed on the small, comforting stone. The connection clicked into place. This wasn't just a comfort object for Leo, it was a tangible link to his mother, to Alexander's lost love. It was a shared vulnerability, a silent language of grief and remembrance. In that quiet, pre-dawn moment, with Leo finally sleeping peacefully between them and Alexander's guard completely down, Lily understood the depth of his world. His protection wasn't just physical, it was an emotional shield he desperately needed, and one he extended to those he deemed his own. But her simple life, the one she had so meticulously planned, was gone. It was replaced by a profound, dangerous intimacy. Safety with Alexander, with this family, came with an emotional and ethical cost she was only now beginning to truly tally. And yet, looking at the sleeping boy, feeling the subtle warmth of Alexander's presence beside her, she knew she wouldn't have it any other way. The morning had been deceptively calm. Lily and Leo were in the sun-drenched breakfast nook, a rare moment of light-hearted chatter filling the usually quiet space. Leo was meticulously arranging blueberries on his pancakes, creating a small, edible galaxy. Lily watched him, a gentle smile on her face, feeling a fragile sense of peace. The previous night's shared vulnerability, the raw grief Alexander had shown, had drawn a new, dangerous line between them. But it had also cemented her resolve. She was here for Leo. Then a quiet knock at the main door echoed through the house. It wasn't the usual staff entrance. A new housekeeper, looking pale and nervous, approached Alexander, who was reviewing documents at the head of the table. She held a small package, wrapped in plain brown paper, tied with a simple twine. "For Leo, sir," she whispered, her eyes darting nervously around the room. "The delivery man said it was a special gift." Lily felt a prickle of unease. Alexander Hayes did not receive special gifts for his son through anonymous delivery men. Her eyes narrowed, observing the package. It was small, innocent-looking, perhaps a child's toy. But something about the way the twine was tied, too neat, too deliberate, made her skin crawl. Alexander's gaze, usually so sharp, softened fractionally as he looked at the package. A gift for Leo. He took it from the housekeeper, his long fingers carefully untying the twine. Leo, sensing the excitement, bounced in his chair. "What is it, Papa? Is it for me?" Alexander smiled, a rare, fleeting expression that transformed his stern face. He unwrapped the paper. Inside lay a small, hand-carved wooden bird, painted a vibrant blue. It was beautiful, delicate, but as Alexander lifted it, something small and metallic glinted beneath its wing. Lily watched his smile vanish, his jaw tightened, his eyes darkening to obsidian. He turned the bird over, revealing a tiny, almost invisible tag embedded in the wood. It was made of dull, tarnished silver, and etched into its surface in precise, chilling script were 3 words: "Little bird will fall." The silence that followed was absolute, suffocating. The air in the room grew heavy, charged with a sudden, terrifying stillness. Leo, sensing the abrupt shift, looked from his father's frozen face to Lily's. His small smile faltered. Alexander didn't speak. He simply clenched his hand. The delicate wooden bird splintered, shrieking as the tiny tag bit into his palm. Wood chips scattered across the pristine tablecloth, some landing near Leo's untouched blueberries. A single bead of blood welled on Alexander's skin, stark against the dark wood. His eyes, fixed on the shattered toy, burned with a cold, terrifying fury Lily had never witnessed before. "Get Leo to his room," Alexander commanded, his voice a low, guttural growl that sent shivers down Lily's spine. It wasn't just anger, it was the sound of controlled violence, barely leashed. "Now!" Lily didn't need to be told twice. She scooped Leo into her arms, pressing him close, shielding his face from the scene. He was whimpering now, sensing the storm that had just broken. She hurried him out of the dining room, past stunned staff, and up the grand staircase. Within minutes, the villa transformed. The quiet efficiency of the staff vanished, replaced by a frantic, urgent energy. Doors slammed shut. The subtle security details Lily had noticed became glaringly obvious. Guards, more of them, appeared from seemingly nowhere, their faces grim, their movements precise. Phones rang incessantly, Alexander's voice sharp and commanding, cutting through the general chaos. The villa, usually a place of quiet opulence, became a fortress under siege. Lily sat on Leo's bed, holding him tightly as he buried his face in her neck, trembling. She could hear the heightened activity even through the thick walls of his room. The soft lamplight cast long, dancing shadows, turning familiar objects into ominous shapes. Terror, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat. This was it. This was the true, brutal reality of Alexander's world, the danger he had warned her about. They didn't just want leverage, they wanted Leo. Alexander appeared in the doorway, his face a mask of stone, his linen shirt now streaked with a fine dust of wood. He walked over to the bed, his eyes scanning Leo, then settling on Lily. "The cartel," he stated, his voice flat, devoid of emotion, yet carrying an immense weight. "They want him, as leverage against me." Lily felt the air leave her lungs. The words hit her like a physical blow. The cartel, the whispered name that brought fear to a city. They wanted Leo, her small, grieving Leo who just wanted to draw suns and arrange blueberries. The central conflict, the one she had unknowingly stepped into, was now undeniable. Protect the boy. She looked at Alexander, at the raw power that emanated from him, the dangerous resolve in his eyes. She was terrified, yes, but looking at Leo's small, vulnerable form in her arms, feeling his soft breaths against her skin, a fierce, unyielding anger began to burn away the fear. She wouldn't run. She couldn't. She was irrevocably intertwined, bound to this boy, to this dangerous family, to this impossible fight. Her simple life was gone, utterly shattered, just like the wooden bird. The villa hummed with a new, terrifying energy. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat, every distant sound a potential attack. Lily had spent the last hour in Leo's room trying to project a calm she didn't feel. reading him a story about a brave knight while her mind raced. The wooden bird, the chilling message, "Little bird will fall," played on a loop in her head. She knew the cartel meant business. Alexander's world had truly crashed into hers, dragging Leo into its destructive wake. Alexander found her there, in the quiet dimness of Leo's room, long after the boy had finally drifted into a restless sleep. He stood by the doorway, a formidable figure, the grim set of his jaw a stark contrast to the soft glow of the nightlight projector on the ceiling. He hadn't changed out of the dark linen shirt, still smudged with wood dust, the faint scent of blood lingering on his palm. His eyes, though weary, held a dangerous resolve. "Lily," he said, his voice low, a controlled rumble that made her nerves sing. "We need to talk." She followed him to his study, a cavernous room filled with dark wood and leather, the air thick with the scent of old books and expensive cigars. He didn't offer her a seat. He simply turned, leaning against the massive mahogany desk, his arms crossed over his chest. His posture was one of absolute authority, absolute finality. "The cartel wants leverage," he stated, cutting straight to the point, his voice devoid of emotion. "They want Leo, and they will stop at nothing to get him." Lily's heart pounded, a frantic drum against her ribs. She braced herself. She knew what was coming. "You have become too involved," Alexander continued, his gaze unwavering, sharp as a blade. "You care for him. That makes you a liability, a target." He pushed off the desk, walking around it slowly, deliberately, until he stood directly in front of her. The air crackled with his power. "I need you to leave, Lily." Her breath hitched. Leave. Just like that. As if she were an expendable asset, a temporary inconvenience. "I have arranged for a substantial sum to be transferred to your account," he went on, his voice flat, dismissing her objections before she could voice them. "More than enough to cover your tuition, your living expenses for years. You will vanish. Take a flight tonight, anywhere you want. My people will ensure your safe passage, your new identity. You will be free. You will be safe." The words hit her like a physical blow. Vanish, as if her life, her connection to Leo, could be bought and swept away with a pile of money, as if her presence was a problem, not a strength. Her mind flashed back to Leo's small, trusting hand in hers, to his rare, shy smiles, to the way he had clung to her during his nightmare, calling for his mother. "No," Lily said, the single word cutting through the tense silence, surprisingly steady. Alexander's eyes narrowed, a flicker of surprise, then irritation crossing his face. "This isn't a discussion, Lily. It's an order. For your own protection." "And for Leo's?" she challenged, her voice rising, a fierce fire igniting within her. "You think removing the only consistent, empathetic presence in his life right now is protection? You think buying me off will make him forget me? That it will make him feel safer when the person he trusts most vanishes without a trace?" She took a step closer, her gaze unwavering, meeting his intensity with her own. "I am not some piece of property you can discard when things get inconvenient, Mr. Hayes. I'm not a liability. I'm his caregiver. I'm a trained psychologist. I understand his grief, his needs. I'm an integral part of his care and safety plan, and I will not abandon him." Her voice was pure steel now, ringing with conviction. "I refuse to vanish." Alexander stared at her, his expression unreadable. His jaw was tight, a muscle ticking beneath his skin. He was a man accustomed to absolute obedience, to having his commands instantly fulfilled. Her defiance, her raw courage, was a direct challenge to his authority, to his very nature. "You don't understand the level of danger," he finally growled, his voice low and dangerous. "They will target you to get to him." "Then I will be prepared," Lily countered, her heart hammering, but her resolve unbreakable. "You told me you would protect your caregivers. You told me your code was truth in your house. I am here. I am staying, and if I am to be protected, then I need to be an active part of that protection. I need to know everything." The silence stretched, thick and heavy. A test. She knew it, a test of her will, of her trust, of his ability to accept defiance from someone he considered under his command. Can he accept her unwavering presence? Can she truly trust that her refusal to leave won't inadvertently endanger Leo further? Lily stood her ground, her gaze locking with his, an unbreakable advocate, ready for the storm. Alexander Hayes stared at her, his expression a thundercloud of conflicting emotions. No one defied him. Not like this. Not with such calm, unyielding conviction. The air in the study crackled, thick with the weight of his unaccustomed silence. Lily felt the tremor in her hands, but her spine remained ramrod straight. She had laid her truth bare. Now, the choice was his. His dark eyes, usually so impenetrable, searched hers, dissecting, analyzing, and for the first time, seeing her not just as a competent caregiver, but as something more. He saw the fierce protectiveness that burned in her, the unwavering empathy, the sheer, audacious strength that refused to be dismissed. He saw her loyalty to Leo, a loyalty as absolute as his own. A long, tense minute passed. The ticking of a grandfather clock in the hall seemed deafening. Then Alexander pushed off the desk, his movements slow, deliberate, each step heavy with unspoken thought. He walked to the window, staring out at the impenetrable darkness of his sprawling estate, his back to her. "You speak of transparency," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. "You demand to know what you're up against." He turned, his gaze sharp, assessing. "Very well." He crossed back to her, stopping just inches away. Lily held her breath, bracing for his rejection, for the final command to leave. Instead, his hand reached out, not to push her away, but to lift a strand of hair from her cheek, his touch surprisingly gentle, yet electric. "You are not a pawn, Lily Carter," he stated, his voice a gravelly whisper that sent a shiver through her. "You are an asset, a variable I did not account for, but one that may prove invaluable." His eyes held hers, a silent, dangerous challenge. "You want a role in this war. You have one." Lily felt a dizzying mix of fear and exhilaration. He wasn't dismissing her. He was accepting her, on her terms. "Your psychology background," he continued, pulling his hand away, the air suddenly cold. "You understand how minds work, how they break, how they can be manipulated, and how they can be strengthened." He gestured to a large, intricately detailed map of Miami, spread across a nearby table, marked with various coded symbols. "The cartel operates not just through force, but through fear, through psychological pressure. They will try to get to Leo any way they can. They will watch his routines, look for weaknesses, for vulnerabilities that even my security cannot see." He leaned over the map, his hand resting on a point near the port of Miami, his voice deepening with intensity. "Your role, Lily, is to fortify Leo's mind, to build his resilience, to recognize any subtle attempts at manipulation, any whispers of fear they might try to plant." He looked up, his gaze piercing. "But more than that, you will use your understanding of human behavior to help us anticipate their moves, their patterns, their psychological tells. You will be my eyes and ears inside the boy's world, and an analyst in this fight." It was a staggering responsibility, terrifying in its scope. She wasn't just a babysitter anymore. She was a shield, a strategist, an active participant in a battle for a child's life. He wasn't just letting her stay, he was empowering her, trusting her with a critical piece of his defense. "You will work with my intelligence team," Alexander continued, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You will be briefed on their methods, their known psychological tactics, but your primary focus remains Leo. His well-being is paramount. Everything else flows from that." Lily swallowed, her mouth suddenly dry. The danger hadn't lessened. It had simply shifted, enveloping her completely. She was no longer just an observer. She was in the heart of it. And yet, looking at the grim resolve in Alexander's eyes, at the burden that weighed heavily on his broad shoulders, she felt a strange sense of purpose. "I understand," she said, her voice steady. "I accept." Alexander nodded slowly, a single sharp dip of his head. The air between them, once charged with conflict, now hummed with a shared, desperate purpose. Their relationship had shifted, transformed from employer and employee to something far more intricate, a partnership forged in the crucible of crisis. He turned back to the map, running a hand through his dark hair. The heavy linen shirt he wore, the same one he'd had on during Leo's nightmare, seemed to embody the immense burden he carried, the responsibility for his son, for his family, for his entire dangerous world. Lily watched him, a profound realization settling over her. She was no longer seeking a simple life. She was building a new one, here, in the heart of the storm, united with a man who, despite his power, carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. The villa had transformed into a command center. Lily moved through it with a new purpose, no longer just a caregiver, but a vital cog in Alexander's formidable machine. Her guest suite, once a gilded cage, now felt like her war room. Maps, intelligence briefings, and psychological profiles of known cartel members replaced her textbooks. The scent of fear still clung to the air, but now it was mixed with the sharp tang of strategy, of a battle being fought on multiple fronts. She spent hours in Alexander's study, the massive mahogany desk now their shared battlefield. Her psychology background, once a quiet academic pursuit, was now a weapon. She pored over the cartel's known tactics, their history of psychological warfare. They didn't just target the body, they targeted the mind, eroding trust, planting seeds of doubt. "They'll try to isolate him," Lily stated, tracing a finger across a satellite image of the villa grounds. Alexander sat opposite her, his intense gaze fixed on her, absorbing every word. "They'll look for opportunities to send messages, to create fear, to make him question his safety. Not just physical threats, but insidious whispers." She tapped a section of a psychological profile. Their leader, El Serpiente, is known for exploiting emotional vulnerabilities. He preys on grief, on attachment. She looked up, meeting Alexander's dark eyes. "Leo's mother. His loss is their biggest weapon." Alexander's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, letting her speak, letting her lead. This was a new dynamic, one that still felt foreign to Lily, yet exhilarating. "We need to fortify Leo psychologically," Lily continued, her voice gaining strength, "not just physically. We can't lie to him, not completely. He's too smart. But we can frame the truth in a way that empowers him, rather than paralyzes him with fear." She leaned forward, her eyes burning with conviction. "We tell him he's a brave knight, and we are his loyal protectors. We give him a role, make him feel like he's part of the solution, not just a helpless victim." Alexander considered her words, his expression unreadable. He was a man of action, of direct confrontation. This subtle psychological approach was outside his usual playbook. "You suggest we play a game?" he finally asked, his voice low. "A mind game," Lily corrected, her gaze unwavering. "One they think they're winning, but we're controlling. We anticipate their attempts to create fear, and we counteract them with reassurance, with strength. We give Leo the tools to process what's happening, even if he doesn't fully understand it." She outlined specific strategies, using story time to discuss bravery and resilience, creating a safe space ritual where Leo could voice his fears without judgment, teaching him simple breathing exercises. We make him feel heard, seen, and utterly secure in our presence. That connection, that trust, will be his strongest armor. Alexander listened, his initial skepticism slowly giving way to a grudging respect. He watched her speak, her passion, her intelligence, her unwavering focus on his son. He saw the intricate web she was weaving, a defense far more nuanced than any physical barrier. "And for them," Alexander finally asked, his voice taking on a dangerous edge, "how do we use this mind game against El Serpiente?" Lily took a deep breath. "They expect us to be reactive, to be predictable. We use that. If they try to isolate Leo, we present a united front. If they try to instill fear, we respond with visible strength and unwavering calm. We feed them what they expect, but we control the narrative. We make them believe they are gaining ground, while in reality they are walking into our trap." She met his gaze, a challenge in her own. "We make them underestimate us. We make them think we're just a grieving father and a naive babysitter. It's a diversion, Mr. Hayes, a psychological smokescreen." A slow, dangerous smile spread across Alexander's face, a predatory gleam in his dark eyes. It was the first genuine smile she had seen from him, and it sent a thrill, sharp and potent, through her. "A smokescreen," he repeated, the words rolling off his tongue. "I like it." He pushed a folder across the desk. "My head of intelligence will meet with you tomorrow. He'll brief you on our counter-surveillance and the information we're feeding them. Your input will be critical." He paused, his gaze lingering on her. "You are proving to be more than I anticipated, Lily Carter." Lily felt a flush rise to her cheeks, a mix of triumph and a strange, unsettling awareness of the man before her. He wasn't just acknowledging her, he was empowering her, pulling her deeper into his dangerous world. His traditional brute force approach was bending, adapting, incorporating her analytical mind. They were no longer two separate entities. They were a unit, a formidable, dangerous pairing, united by the boy, by the game they were now playing. The weight of gold, the price of her tuition, now felt like a badge of honor, a symbol of her agency in a fight she was determined to win. The villa's controlled quiet shattered. Not with a scream, but with a sudden, jarring alert that sliced through the air, a high-pitched electronic wail that pulsed from every corner of the house. Lily, who had been helping Leo build a towering block castle in the playroom, felt her blood run cold. The alarm was not a drill. This was real. Alexander's security team, usually a discreet presence, materialized instantly. Dark suits, grim faces, moving with a terrifying efficiency. Lily grabbed Leo, pulling him close, shielding his small body as if she could absorb the danger herself. Alexander appeared, a whirlwind of furious energy, his voice a low, dangerous rumble as he barked orders into a comms device. The villa was in lockdown. "Perimeter breach," he snapped, his eyes like steel. They tried a diversion at the south gate, a drone, but the real target was elsewhere. A frantic search began. Every room, every shadow was scrutinized. Lily held Leo tightly, her heart thundering, trying to project a calm she didn't possess. This wasn't a game theory anymore. It was a desperate hunt. They were looking for something or someone who had gotten inside. Hours crawled by, each minute thick with dread. Leo, sensing the terror, clung to Lily, whimpering softly. The alarm had been silenced, but the tension remained, a suffocating shroud. Alexander paced his study, his face a mask of furious concentration. His team reported nothing. No intruders, no clear entry point, no signs of a struggle. It made no sense. The breach was confirmed, yet the enemy was invisible. "It has to be internal," Alexander finally ground out, his voice laced with a dangerous suspicion. He slammed his fist on the desk, rattling the maps. "Someone inside. Someone we trust." His eyes, cold and hard, swept over his head of security, then landed on Lily. Lily felt a jolt of icy fear. She had come from outside. She was the newest addition. The implication hung heavy in the air. "Search everything," Alexander commanded, his voice raw with barely contained rage. "Every staff member's quarters, every bag, every item brought into this house in the last month." The search was brutal, invasive. Lily watched, her stomach churning, as her own guest suite was meticulously combed through. She had nothing to hide, but the suspicion was a palpable weight. Then a security agent emerged from Leo's room, his face pale, holding something small and innocuous in his gloved hand. It was Leo's teddy bear, the worn, beloved comfort object he carried everywhere. But beneath its ear, stitched with horrifying precision, was a tiny, almost invisible chip. A tracker, sophisticated, silent, and active. Lily gasped, a choked sound of pure horror. Not a physical intruder, not a direct kidnapping attempt, something far more insidious. A serpent in the garden. Alexander stared at the teddy bear, his face turning to stone. "Trace it," he ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. "Find the source. Now." The tech team worked frantically, their fingers flying across keyboards. Minutes felt like hours. Then a low murmur spread through the room. The head of tech looked up, his face grim. "Sir," he said, his voice hesitant, "the tracker's frequency, it's bespoke, matches a batch ordered by a private security firm. And that firm, it's owned by the Sunshine Nanny Agency." Lily felt the blood drain from her face. The Sunshine Nanny Agency, the agency that had placed her here. Her knees buckled. Alexander's head snapped up, his gaze locking onto Lily. His eyes were cold, filled with a terrible, dawning suspicion. He walked towards her, his presence a dark, overwhelming force. "The agency," he repeated, his voice dangerously low. "The one that sent you." Lily's breath caught in her throat. Her mind reeled, a whirlwind of shock and betrayal. The kind, smiling woman who ran the agency, who had vouched for her, for Leo. It was impossible, yet the evidence was undeniable. The tracker, the agency, the teddy bear. "No," Lily whispered, her voice trembling, close to breaking. "No, I didn't know. I swear to you, Alexander, I would never." Her eyes, wide and filled with genuine distress, pleaded with him. She felt a wave of nausea, the world tilting on its axis. The betrayal was a physical blow. The agency, a trusted source for families, had planted a tracker on a grieving child. And she, Lily, had unknowingly been the conduit. Alexander searched her face, his gaze piercing, scrutinizing every flicker of emotion. He saw the genuine horror in her eyes, the raw, unfeigned shock that mirrored his own. Her distress was too profound, too real to be an act. He saw her unwavering loyalty to Leo, the fierce protectiveness she had shown from day one. He knew her character. He knew her truth. His jaw tightened, not with suspicion towards her, but with a cold, terrifying fury directed at the true betrayer. "She placed you here," he stated, not a question but a dawning realization. "Not to help, to plant this." He held up the teddy bear, the tiny tracker a stark, brutal symbol of their enemy's cunning. "You were her unwitting accomplice." Lily nodded, tears welling in her eyes, not for herself, but for Leo, for the monstrous violation of his innocence. The true enemy wasn't just lurking outside. It had wormed its way into their home, into the boy's most cherished comfort. The moral twist was sickening, a betrayal from a seemingly trusted source. Her simple life, her carefully constructed ethics, had just been irrevocably tangled in a web of deceit. And she was standing right in the middle of it. The world had fractured. Lily stood there, reeling, the horrifying implication of the tracker in Leo's teddy bear, traced back to the Sunshine Nanny Agency, crashing over her. She was a conduit, an unwitting pawn. The nausea churned in her stomach, but it quickly morphed into a searing, righteous anger. How could someone betray a child so utterly? Alexander's dark eyes, once filled with suspicion, now blazed with a cold, terrifying fury directed elsewhere. He had seen her genuine distress, the raw, unfeigned horror. He trusted her. The silent affirmation was a powerful, dangerous current that surged between them. "This isn't just about a tracker," Lily said, her voice trembling but firm, pushing past the shock. "This is about a direct threat to Leo. She used me. She used a trusted service. She's compromised." Her mind, trained to analyze, was already racing. Mrs. Albright, she insisted on bringing that specific teddy bear herself, said it was a welcome gift from the agency. I thought it was a nice gesture. The memory, once innocuous, now tasted like ash. Alexander's gaze snapped back to the tech team. "Confirmation. Is Albright the owner? Cross-reference her with any known associates of El Serpiente." The lead tech, a lean man named Finn with quick fingers, nodded. "On it, sir. We're tracing her digital footprint now. The bespoke frequency for this tracker, it's tied to her company's procurement records." Lily stepped forward, her hands clenching into fists. She must have thought I was expendable, an easy mark, someone who wouldn't notice, someone who wouldn't care. The thought fueled her resolve. She knew Leo's routine. She knew his vulnerabilities. She asked me specific questions about his comfort objects, about his sleep patterns. She looked at Alexander, her eyes burning. "She's not just an agency owner, she's an asset for them." Alexander watched her, a silent acknowledgement passing between them. He didn't question her, he simply nodded. "Finn, put Lily on point for this. She knows Albright. Her insights will be invaluable." Lily felt a surge of adrenaline, fear giving way to a fierce determination. She wasn't just observing now, she was leading the charge against the betrayer. She sat with Finn, her focus absolute. "When did Mrs. Albright last contact me directly?" A follow-up email about my adjustment. I remember her asking if Leo had bonded with his new teddy bear. Finn's fingers flew. "Found it, an email from Albright sent 3 days ago. Subject, checking in. And a specific line, has our little Mr. Snuggles found a new home in Leo's heart?" Lily felt a chill. Mr. Snuggles, that's what she called it when she dropped it off. It was a sickening detail, a personal touch meant to disarm. She wanted to know if the tracker was in place and being used, Lily stated, her voice cold with resolve. She was confirming its activation. Alexander, who had been listening intently from the corner of the room, stepped forward. "We have enough. Albright will be apprehended." His voice was lethal, devoid of mercy. "But not before she serves one last purpose." He looked at Lily, his gaze intense. "Truth in this house, Lily. That is my code, and absolute protection for those who earn my trust. You have earned it." His words were a balm, a powerful affirmation in the chaos. This agency, this woman, she thought she was clever. She thought she could use my son, use you, as a weapon. He gave a grim smile that held no humor. "We will turn her weapon against them." He turned to Finn. "Albright will be replaced. Her communications will be intercepted, monitored. We will feed El Serpiente precisely what we want him to hear. False leads, misinformation. We will make him believe his little bird is still singing to him while we prepare to clip his wings." Lily watched him, a profound respect settling in her heart. He wasn't just a powerful man. He was a man of his word. His code of honor, once a vague concept, was now a tangible reality. He had seen her integrity, her unwavering loyalty to Leo, and he had responded with absolute trust. The betrayal still stung, but now, armed with Alexander's trust and her own sharp mind, Lily felt ready for the fight. They were no longer just reacting. They were playing a game of their own, and this time they held all the cards. The villa was no longer a home, but a war room. Every surface in Alexander's study was covered with maps, surveillance feeds, and intricate schematics of the port of Miami. The air thrummed with the silent, coiled tension of final preparations. Days had bled into nights, fueled by strong coffee and a desperate, shared purpose. Lily felt the exhaustion deep in her bones, but beneath it, a sharp, exhilarating clarity. The chessboard was set. Mrs. Albright, the betrayer from the nanny agency, was now a pawn in their game. Her intercepted communications feeding El Serpiente precisely the false narrative Alexander wanted. The cartel believed their tracker was still active, their little bird still singing from inside the heavily fortified villa. They believed Alexander was cornered, his next move predictable. They were wrong. Lily stood beside Alexander, her gaze sweeping over the elaborate plan laid out before them. She understood every detail, every contingency. Her psychology background, once an academic pursuit, had been honed into a tactical edge. She had helped anticipate the cartel's reactions, advised on the psychological pressure points to exploit. She wasn't just observing anymore, she was orchestrating. Alexander turned to her, his dark eyes, usually so guarded, now held a glint of something akin to fierce respect. "The decoy must be convincing," he said, his voice low and steady, a stark contrast to the storm brewing outside. "They will be watching for my vehicle, for any sign of Leo being moved." Lily nodded, her stomach a tight knot of anticipation. "They'll expect a grand escape, a heavily armored convoy. We give them—" A whisper. The plan was audacious, terrifying. A deliberate misdirection, a gamble of epic proportions. While a carefully prepared decoy would draw the cartel's attention, Alexander would move Leo through a highly secured, unexpected route. But the decoy wasn't just a vehicle, it was a distraction meant to be pursued, a target, and someone had to drive it. Alexander's gaze met hers, a silent question hanging in the air. "The cartel will be aggressive," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, yet Lily heard the underlying warning. "They will believe Leo is inside." Lily felt a jolt of ice and fire. She knew what he was asking, what he was offering, not just a role, but the most dangerous role. A critical, high-stakes part that relied entirely on her courage, her ability to maintain composure under extreme duress. It relied on her willingness to put herself in the direct line of fire. "I'll do it," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. There was no hesitation, no fear, not really, just a profound, almost desperate need to protect Leo, to see this through. She would not abandon him. She would not let this monstrous threat touch his innocent world. Alexander's eyes searched hers, a flicker of something raw, vulnerable, passing through their depths. He saw her resolve, her fierce, unyielding spirit. He saw the depth of her commitment, a bond with his son that transcended any professional duty. He knew instinctively that she would not break. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her jaw, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. It was a fleeting, tender touch, an unspoken acknowledgement of the immense risk they were about to take, of the shared vulnerability in this moment before the storm. The air crackled with their unspoken understanding, a profound connection forged in crisis. She felt the warmth of his skin, the calloused strength of his hand, and for a split second, the enormity of what they were facing, the sheer danger, faded into the background. All that mattered was this silent, shared purpose. "Be careful, Lily," he murmured, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that sent a shiver down her spine. It wasn't an order. It was a plea. A rare, unguarded glimpse into the man beneath the syndicate head, a man who, despite his power, was entrusting the life of his son and his own future to her. She met his gaze, her heart thundering, but her resolve unshakable. "You too, Alexander." The moment shattered as Finn, Alexander's tech head, burst into the study. "Sir, we have movement. El Serpiente's crew. They're heading to the port. They've taken the bait." Alexander nodded, his face hardening, the mask of controlled power snapping back into place. "Execute Phase 1, he commanded, his voice sharp and decisive. He turned to Lily, a final, intense look passing between them. "The game begins." Lily took a deep breath, the scent of fear and adrenaline filling her lungs. Her heart hammered, but her mind was clear. She was ready, ready for the dawn, ready for the docks, ready for the war they were about to unleash. The biting chill of pre-dawn Miami cut through Lily's thin jacket, a stark contrast to the humid warmth she was used to. The port of Miami loomed before her, a monstrous jigsaw puzzle of stacked shipping containers, skeletal cranes reaching into the bruised purple sky, and shadowy warehouses that seemed to swallow the light. This was it, the culmination of weeks of fear, strategy, and a terrifying unspoken bond. She gripped the steering wheel of the black SUV, her knuckles white. It was a nondescript vehicle, purposefully chosen to blend in, yet to her it felt like a beacon, screaming target. In the passenger seat, nestled inside a padded, reinforced box, was Leo's teddy bear. The same bear, now containing the false tracker, broadcasting its deceptive signal into the pre-dawn silence. El Serpiente believed Leo was in this car. He believed Alexander was trapped. Lily took a deep, shuddering breath, the metallic tang of salt and exhaust filling her lungs. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the quiet hum of the engine. Fear, cold and sharp, coiled in her gut, but beneath it, a steel-hard resolve. She pictured Leo's sleeping face, the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the small, ocean-stained pebble clutched in his hand. This wasn't for Alexander. This was for Leo. Her fierce advocacy for him was a shield against the terror. "You're online, Lily." Alexander's voice, calm and steady, crackled through the comms device clipped to her ear. It was a lifeline in the engulfing darkness. "Stick to the route. Maintain speed. They're already moving." She nodded, though he couldn't see her. "Understood." Her voice was a little shaky, but held. She pulled away from the secluded rendezvous point, the SUV's tires crunching softly on gravel. The pre-planned route was burned into her mind, a labyrinth of dusty service roads, dimly lit docks, and narrow passages between towering containers. Every turn, every stretch of open road, was a calculated risk. The sky began to lighten, a sliver of fiery orange bleeding into the purple haze. The details of the port emerged from the gloom. Rusty anchors, coils of thick rope, the silent, watchful eyes of security cameras. She felt utterly exposed, a tiny, vulnerable moving target in a vast, desolate landscape. A flicker in her rearview mirror. Headlights. Not one, but two sets, appearing suddenly from behind a stack of containers, moving fast. They were there, closer than she'd anticipated. A fresh wave of adrenaline surged through her, making her hands tremble. "They're on you!" Alexander's voice was tight now, losing some of its calm. "Hold steady, Lily. Do not engage." Her foot pressed harder on the accelerator. The SUV surged forward, the engine whining in protest. She wasn't fleeing, she was leading. She was the bait. Her job was to draw them in, to keep their focus solely on her. She glanced again in the mirror. The two vehicles, dark sedans, were gaining, too fast. She could almost feel their predatory intent, closing in like sharks. She had to make herself visible. She had to convince them. Taking a sharp, predetermined turn, she deliberately swerved into a more open section of the port, a wide expanse of tarmac bordered by an empty pier. The headlights of the pursuing cars instantly flared, blinding in her mirrors. They had seen her. They were committed. A sudden, jarring impact rattled the SUV. One of the sedans had clipped her rear bumper, a deliberate warning. Her hands tightened on the wheel, her knuckles aching. She could hear the shouts now, muffled by her closed windows, but undeniably angry, demanding. "They're trying to force you off the road." Alexander's voice was a low growl now. "Keep going. Don't stop for anything." Lily bit back a scream, a primal surge of terror. She was in the line of fire, alone. The danger was real, tangible, threatening to consume her. But then Leo's face flashed in her mind, his trusting eyes, his small, brave heart. She wouldn't let them touch him. She couldn't. She swerved violently, narrowly avoiding another attempted ram. The SUV fishtailed, tires squealing in protest, but she wrestled it back under control, her focus absolute, her fierce advocacy for that little boy, her unwavering trust in Alexander's plan, fueled her. This was her sacrifice, her part in the war. She would keep them occupied. She would draw their fire. She would not stop, not until Leo was safe. The port, once a landscape of shadowy corners, was now a dangerous, exhilarating canvas for her defiance. The impact jolted the SUV, sending a fresh wave of adrenaline through Lily. Her head snapped back, her teeth clacked together. The cartel sedan had rammed her again, harder this time, trying to spin her out. Tires screamed on the asphalt, the smell of burning rubber filling the air. Her knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her arms aching from the strain of holding the vehicle steady. "They're getting desperate." Alexander's voice, sharper now, crackled in her ear, a live wire of tension. "Keep them focused on you, Lily. Just a little longer." She gritted her teeth, pushing the accelerator. The SUV bucked and roared, a frantic beast. She darted between two towering container stacks, the narrow gap barely wide enough, scraping paint from her side mirror. The cartel cars, less agile, hesitated, losing precious seconds. It was a gamble, a dangerous game of chicken, but she was playing it. For Leo. Then, a sudden explosive sound tore through the morning, not near her, but from deeper within the maze of containers. A muffled thud, then a screech of tires, not hers, not the cartel's. Something had happened. She risked a quick glance in her rearview mirror. One of the pursuing sedans, the one that had just rammed her, was swerving wildly. Its front tire was blown, smoke curling from the wheel well. It careened into a stack of empty pallets, crashing with a loud, sickening crunch of metal and splintering wood. Lily's breath hitched. Alexander! He was moving. The trap was sprung. The second cartel car, startled, faltered for a second, then doubled down, accelerating, determined to reach her. But its advantage was gone. It was alone. "They've lost one," Lily breathed into her comms, a raw exultation in her voice. "Good," Alexander responded, his voice a low growl of satisfaction. "Now, your turn." As if on cue, a black van, a heavy-duty armored vehicle she recognized from the villa's security fleet, suddenly emerged from a blind corner, cutting off the remaining cartel sedan. It was a swift, decisive maneuver, executed with brutal precision. The cartel driver slammed on his brakes, tires smoking, but it was too late. He was trapped, boxed in between the van and a solid concrete barrier. Lily watched in her mirror as figures in dark tactical gear, Alexander's men, swarmed the immobilized sedan. There were no gunshots, no explosions, just a rapid, efficient dismantling of the threat. Doors were yanked open, figures pulled out. The confrontation was swift, clinical, decisive. The hunter had become the hunted. A wave of profound relief, so intense it almost buckled her knees, washed over Lily. She eased her foot off the accelerator, the SUV gliding to a stop by an empty stretch of pier. The air, once thick with tension, now felt light, breathable. She unclenched her hands from the steering wheel, her fingers stiff and trembling. It was over. The immediate threat. Leo was safe. She fumbled for the comms device, pulling it from her ear. Her hands were shaking too much to speak. A moment later, Alexander appeared. He walked towards her, emerging from the labyrinth of containers like a dark, unstoppable force. His face was grim, but his eyes, when they met hers, held a depth of relief that mirrored her own. He reached her car, pulling open her door. Lily didn't wait. She practically fell out of the SUV, her legs weak. Alexander caught her, his strong arms wrapping around her, pulling her against his chest. It was a fierce, protective embrace, crushing the air from her lungs, but she clung to him, burying her face in his linen shirt, inhaling the scent of his power, his safety. His heart hammered against hers, a frantic rhythm of adrenaline and survival. "You did good, Lily," he murmured, his voice rough, his breath warm against her hair. "You were perfect." She pulled back slightly, looking up at him, her eyes still wide with the echoes of fear, but also with a dawning sense of triumph. "They're neutralized?" He nodded, a grim satisfaction in his eyes. El Serpiente's top lieutenants, apprehended. No casualties on our side. The intel you helped gather, the diversion, it worked flawlessly. He squeezed her shoulder, his gaze sweeping over the now secured port. "The immediate threat to Leo is gone. He's safe." Lily felt the words settle deep in her bones, a profound peace amidst the chaos. The sun was finally breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in hues of fiery orange and soft rose. The port of Miami, once a battleground, now shimmered with the promise of a new day. But as she looked at Alexander, at the grim resolve still etched on his face, she knew this wasn't truly over. The immediate battle was won, but the larger war, the underlying evil of the trafficking pipeline, still remained. This was merely the calm before the next storm. The world was still spinning. Lily leaned against Alexander, his arms a solid anchor in the swirling chaos of her mind. The port of Miami, slowly waking under a bruised dawn, felt like a battlefield she had barely survived. Her body trembled, the adrenaline finally receding, leaving her weak and profoundly affected. The memory of the black sedans, the jarring impacts, the raw, unadulterated fear still clawed at her. But Leo was safe. That was the only thought that truly mattered. Alexander held her for a long moment, his grip tight, his relief a palpable force against her. Then he gently eased her back, his hands resting on her shoulders, his gaze searching hers. "Let's get you inside," he murmured, his voice rough with concern. He led her through the still tense port, past his operatives who were systematically securing the area, their faces grim but victorious. The air thrummed with the aftermath of battle, but a fragile peace was settling. Back at the villa, the atmosphere was different. The urgent chaos had subsided, replaced by a quiet, watchful efficiency. Leo, thankfully, was still asleep, oblivious to the war that had just been fought for him. Lily found herself in Alexander's study, the same room where they had planned their audacious gamble. The maps were still on the table, the strategic markings a stark reminder of the danger. She sat on the leather couch, a mug of steaming chamomile tea warming her hands, but doing little to calm the tremor deep inside her. The immediate threat to Leo was neutralized. El Serpiente's lieutenants were apprehended. The cartel had been outmaneuvered. But as the fear began to recede, something else rose in its place, a cold, hard knot of anger. She looked at Alexander, who stood by the window, his back to her, staring out at the rising sun. He was a formidable man, powerful, dangerous, capable of orchestrating such a precise, decisive victory. He had protected his son. He had protected her. But he hadn't stopped the source of the rot. "This isn't enough," Lily said, her voice surprisingly steady, cutting through the quiet. Alexander turned slowly, his dark eyes, heavy with exhaustion, settling on her. A flicker of surprise, then a shadow of weary irritation crossed his face. "Lily, we just dismantled their operation. Leo is safe." "For now," she countered, pushing herself to her feet, the tremor in her legs ignored. Her moral compass, usually a quiet guide, was now screaming. "You apprehended their lieutenants. You stopped one shipment, one specific threat. But the pipeline, Alexander, the trafficking pipeline that cartel was part of, that still exists. It still functions. It will just find new hands. She walked towards him, her gaze unwavering, her professional boundaries, her desire for a simple life, all forgotten in the face of this larger evil. You have the power to stop this, not just react to it. You have the resources, the influence, the reach that no police force in this city could ever hope to match. Her voice rose, fueled by a fierce conviction. You saw what they tried to do to Leo. They used a child as leverage, and they do that to other children, Alexander, to other families, every single day. He watched her, his jaw tight, his expression unreadable. He was accustomed to commands, not demands, to being obeyed, not challenged. This was a line she was crossing, a direct affront to his way of life, to the very foundation of his power. "My family is my priority," he stated, his voice low, a warning in its depths. "My resources are for their protection." "And what if protecting your family means preventing this kind of evil from ever reaching them again?" Lily challenged, refusing to back down. Her agency, her voice, burned bright and unwavering. What if true protection means dismantling the entire system, not just swatting at the flies? She took another step, closing the distance between them. "You talk about your code of honor, about truth in your house, about no harm to caregivers. What about no harm to the innocent? What about a world where Leo doesn't have to grow up under the shadow of this threat?" She met his gaze, unflinching. "This is your ultimate test, Alexander, not just protecting your son, but doing what is right, what is necessary to truly make this city safer. You have the ability to do more than just react. You have the ability to change things, to make a difference, to dismantle that pipeline for good." The silence stretched, thick with tension. Alexander stared at her, his dark eyes searching, dissecting. He saw the unwavering conviction in her eyes, the depth of her moral resolve. He saw the woman who had just stared down a cartel, driven by her fierce love for his son. He saw the truth of her words, a truth that resonated with the nascent stirrings of a different kind of honor within him. His jaw flexed. He looked away, out at the dawn, his mind undoubtedly weighing the immense cost, the deep disruption to his carefully constructed world. This wasn't just about a tactical decision. It was about a fundamental shift, a commitment to a path of actual redemption, not just reactive protection. Then he turned back to her, his gaze intense, a grudging respect, a profound understanding, replacing the earlier irritation. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her chin, his thumb brushing her lip. "A new path," he murmured, his voice a low, gravelly whisper that sent a shiver through her. "Very well, Lily Carter. Consider it done." Lily felt a wave of relief so profound it almost buckled her knees. He had agreed. He had heard her. He had chosen. This wasn't just a victory for Leo. It was a victory for a different kind of future. A future she was now irrevocably part of. Her simple life was a distant memory, replaced by a complex, dangerous, but profoundly meaningful existence, forged in crisis, and now redefined by a shared purpose. The price of peace, it seemed, was not just vigilance, but a willingness to demand a better world. Weeks later, the frantic energy that had gripped the Hayes villa had finally receded. The silence that now filled the opulent halls was no longer heavy with dread, but a quiet, living calm. Lily felt it in her bones, a deep sigh of relief that settled into her very soul. The world was no longer spinning on the edge of a knife. The news channels, once filled with whispers of cartel activities, now occasionally reported on a powerful, anonymous benefactor funding anti-trafficking initiatives, or a sudden dramatic shake-up in Miami's criminal underworld. Alexander, true to his word, had moved, not with fanfare, but with the quiet, devastating efficiency of a force of nature. He was dismantling the pipeline, piece by painful piece, using his influence for good, a testament to a code of honor she had dared to awaken. The villa itself felt different, less like a fortress, more like a home. The subtle glint of security cameras was still there, a lingering shadow, but it no longer felt suffocating. Instead, it was a quiet assurance. Leo was thriving. His small smiles were more frequent, less fragile. He still carried his ocean-stained pebble, a tangible link to his mother, but he now spoke of her with a gentle sadness rather than inconsolable grief. Therapy for the entire household had begun. Not just for Leo, but for Alexander too, a quiet space for both of them to navigate the vast, empty chasm of their shared loss. Lily, sitting in on some of Leo's sessions, saw the slow, painstaking work of healing, the subtle shifts in Alexander's hardened exterior, the tiny cracks that allowed a glimpse of the man beneath. One afternoon, a thick envelope arrived for Lily. Inside, a letter from the dean of her psychology department confirming a full, transparent scholarship for her PhD, funded by an anonymous donor dedicated to supporting promising young minds in child psychology. No strings attached, no hidden clauses. It was an acknowledgement of her intellect, her potential, not a veiled bribe. Alexander had orchestrated it, of course, but he had done so with a meticulous integrity that honored her own. She could pursue her dreams, free from the crushing weight of tuition bills, yet still remain exactly where she wanted to be, because she had made her choice. She sat on Leo's bed one evening, the familiar weight of his small head against her shoulder. He was sketching in his notebook, a bright, joyful sun blooming on the page, surrounded by tiny, happy fish. The nightlight projector cast its swirling galaxy across the ceiling, an ocean of stars reflecting in his peaceful eyes. Alexander stood in the doorway watching them, his presence no longer a tense imposition, but a quiet, comforting anchor. He'd shed the heavy linen shirt, opting for a soft, dark sweater, making him seem less like a syndicate head and more like just a father. "Ready for your story, little lion?" Lily murmured, smoothing Leo's hair. He nodded, looking up at Alexander, a small smile playing on his lips. "Papa, too?" Alexander's gaze met Lily's, a silent question, a shared moment of vulnerability passing between them. He offered her a soft, almost imperceptible smile, then walked into the room, sitting on the edge of the bed, his presence warm and steady beside them. He didn't need to be asked twice. Lily began to read, her voice a soft, soothing melody, filling the room with tales of brave knights and distant lands. She felt Alexander's arm brush hers, a casual, almost accidental touch that sent a familiar warmth through her. It wasn't a grand, sweeping romance, not yet. It was something deeper, something far more precious, a careful love growing slowly, tenderly, in the quiet spaces between bedtime routines and shared vulnerabilities. She looked at Leo, nestled safely between them, then up at the shimmering stars on the ceiling. Her simple life was gone, utterly transformed. But in its place, she had found something infinitely richer, a found family, a purpose that resonated with every fiber of her being. She stayed, not out of obligation or fear, but out of a choice born of love, agency, and a fierce, unwavering belief in the new, safer future they were building, one bedtime story at a time, under an ocean of stars. If you enjoyed the video, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel to keep up with our content.